So I've been having a pretty good time in Dragonflight. Like, the Dragon Isles is a huge landscape that I can live in. The world is bustling with activity, with people gathering materials or hunting for rares and making soup, while gear is easily accessible and my alts aren't burdened by any sort of side grind really. I'm getting there when it comes to Mythic Plus, and my guild is nearly done with the heroic version of the Vault of the Incarnate raid, with too many healers showing up one day and not enough showing on another day, but yeah, that's definitely an anecdotal thing. However, apparently, Dragonflight hasn't been doing so well, or that is, it hasn't sold so well since its release almost 3 months ago. Over on MMO Champion is a lingering thread titled "No Dragonflight Numbers from Blizzard Means What?" Really. Hey, it's Soul, and today's video covers the indisputable fact that Dragonflight did not sell very well at its launch. I'm not going to offer expert analysis here, don't expect that. This is just one fan making a video. It's going to be full of disputable takes, like how bad is it that the expansion didn't do so well, and I'll go over some of the biggest reasons why it underperformed, as well as smaller reasons that of course add up into like a big deal. Again, I'm speaking for myself, but I'm really enjoying Dragonflight. I think it's got potential to be one of the best that World of Warcraft has had to offer. I'm not here to trash talk or drag fans down, but even someone like I can see what's held Dragonflight back, and in a way, what's made it come up short. Hit the like button, subscribe for more content, and so on and so forth, and let's start with Blizzard's own admission. The other week, Activision Blizzard's quarterly report cited the following, quote, "Early Dragonflight sales have not reached the level of the prior expansion," end quote. It's a very simple answer to MMO Champion's question: why didn't Blizzard wave like a flag over how big Dragonflight's release was? Why couldn't they come up with some bombastic stat like, "Oh, here we go, I got it guys, Dragonflight was the fastest selling game in November 24th of 2022 in the North American region between the hours of 3 and 6 p.m. Pacific time." Yeah! There was no milestone hit. That's pretty much it. That's the long and short of it. There's nothing newsworthy, at least, and that's it. That's the answer. Thread over. But as gamers, and I guess as people who are obsessed with stats and the reasons behind the stats and the stories that we create from that, this video has only just begun. I'll talk about this later, but I'm going to drop another quote real quick. Post-launch, subscriber retention in the West is higher than recent expansions. So there's a bit to unpack once we get to that. First though, let's talk about why Dragonflight didn't sell as well as Shadowlands did, starting with what I think are the biggest reasons. Now, first off, Shadowlands as a full expansion, I don't think it did so well. The sales of Shadowlands expansion boxes though, apparently it did great. It broke some minor milestone, like it sold really fast. I did not care to look it up to write it into this script, but Shadowlands came on the heels of Battle for Azeroth, and at the time there was broad sentiment among players that they were tired of the faction war, they were tired of Sylvanas, and they wanted out. And for some, Shadowlands meant a sort of catharsis, a chance to drive their warhammers into Sylvanas' skull. And with that came a bunch of other shiny new things, like Covenants, and Covenant powers, and Soulbinds, and Legendaries, and Torghast, and more. Long story short though, Shadowlands didn't quite execute on its hype. Folks bought the boxes, but many didn't stick around. You can blame Ian, you can blame the pandemic, or Activision, or you can disagree. Maybe you thought Shadowlands was great, and there are parts of it that I personally enjoyed. As someone who observes the mood of fans on an almost daily basis though, it's not hard for me to make the claim that it wasn't long before players kind of tuned out and they just wanted to get out of the Shadowlands. It's important to point out though that this whole conversation is not about Shadowlands or Dragonflight and how it did well. The jury's still out for Dragonflight. We're only 3 months in. We're just talking about why Dragonflight hasn't sold as well as Shadowlands or other expansions, I guess, because that narrows the perspective. It's one thing to be disappointed about the trading post, or how long it took for the inspiration or whatever catalyst it's called to become available. But those didn't exactly sell pre-orders or get folks jumping in during the pre-patch or the initial launch. What sells expansion boxes? That's what's being asked here. So anyway, back to the biggest reasons why Dragonflight didn't do so well. The Blizzard lawsuit dropped mid-2021, just when the WoW team was starting to get it together by releasing patch 9.1, and then they were trying to get on to 9.1.5, when I would like to say that Shadowlands started to take new strides with addressing player feedback and concerns. And then the lawsuit happened. Now, as one of the oldest gaming studios and publishers around, Blizzard is very high profile, so stories around them tend to get much more attention than usual, for better or worse. The lawsuit itself was awful. Women and men were mistreated, and the accused were enabled and protected. Fans felt hurt and betrayed, and Blizzard got the thrashing that it deserved. Long-term reaction, though, fans left in protest, or maybe it was the straw that broke the camel's back, whatever. Since then, things have changed. I'd like to think that Blizzard and the WoW team have made strides to rebuild good faith. But make no mistake, that faith was damaged, and for many was straight up destroyed. And when Dragonflight was announced, I have no doubt that some folks didn't notice in the slightest because they moved on, and they have no intention of looking back. You know what sells pre-orders? Other than the digital bait that you get that's exclusive to pre-orders, or at least until it's not. What sells pre-orders is mostly faith. Faith that the thing that you're picking up is going to actually launch, and on time, and be good. But I pre-ordered Fallout 76, I confess. Whoops. Although it has improved a lot. I also bought the early access version of a game called Hades, only because I played a few other games from the studio that made it, and I had faith in this one. And that faith was answered with a pretty fun game. Faith and a promotional thing made me pre-order Mists of Pandaria, and pretty much every WoW expansion since. But without that faith, that we would enjoy an expansion's theme or setting or rely on the quality, it wouldn't matter if the next expansion was called World of Warcraft, everyone gets everything they want, including player housing. Some folks just aren't coming back. So what we have, my opinion, is a dissatisfying expansion and a studio tainted by controversy. I think that was the 1-2 punch that really knocked the teeth out of whatever the next WoW expansion was going to be. I think those are the biggest reasons, but it doesn't stop there. There's plenty to nitpick. Some of the reasons might have you nodding your head like, oh yep, nailed it, while other reasons may have you scratching your head, and that's totally okay. I'm not trying to offer like irrefutable proof here. These are just reasons that I've been observing over the past 10 or so months. Why Dragonflight didn't do well as it might have. Like the price. $50, man. $50 is $50. Folks paid $50 plus subscription and got Shadowlands, for better or worse. There comes a time where we gotta think twice about whether we're gonna throw down $50 for a 20-year-old game or something new. Personally, I think that if they sold the base expansion box for like really cheap, like $30, maybe even $20, but they also added more to the other versions, like, you know, extra game time or something, there probably would have been a ton more pre-orders. Heck, if they offered an early adopter sale price, you bet that there would be folks shouting to the rooftops and making videos about, OMG, do you know how scummy that is? But you know what? They would be indirectly advertising Dragonflight for the low price of like 20 or $30 as well. When it comes to consumer trends in video games, consumers, love new things. Like, ooh, check this out, it's The Garrison. It's WoW's take on player housing. And hey, check this out, shiny artifact weapons and powering up beyond max level. Here's a neck that unlocks crazy powers, an island to explore, extra buttons with essences and covenant abilities, all in a feature trailer, a teaser of what's to come while trying not to tell you how long the grinds would be. New features are exciting, but we didn't quite get that with the Dragonflight announcement. There are overhauls with flying, and there are talents, and there's a new class, and an updated UI, and professions. But apart from dragon riding, nothing that really popped people's curiosity. Nothing that made people think, ooh, what can I do with this? How powerful or badass can I feel? So in a way, we can credit the weakness of Dragonflight's launch to what it is, or isn't. It's an overhaul to freshen up the game while not exactly introducing anything revolutionary and nothing super new. There's a certain safety, knowing that they're not trying to launch another Warfront, but I bet to many, Dragonflight just didn't look very compelling, maybe uninteresting. I really liked Dragonflight's 2 reveal cinematics. They look great. They give off a pretty good feel-good energy. But I wonder if the trailers did a great job of getting people excited to play it, let alone buy it. By contrast, the Battle for Azeroth cinematic tapped into our base instincts of pride and the emotional excitement of the faction conflict. The Shadowlands cinematic teased at a hero like Bolvar Fordragon becoming active again, and of course to have Sylvanas violently answer for her crimes. So I guess with those trailers, there were things that sort of drew us in. Dragonflight didn't use that same level of conflict. It didn't rally us to rise up. It invited us to a new and a curious world. Of course, there's the question on whether or not the trailer matches the end result. In hindsight, the faction war ended in the second patch, and the jailer fizzled out, while Sylvanas is given a chance at redemption. But that was after selling tons of expansion boxes. Did Blizzard lie or mislead in this case? Maybe. That's for you to answer. What if Dragonflight's first cinematics made it way more about the aspects versus the incarnates in a head-to-head? Like, we see glimpses of draconic troops preparing to defend their recently reclaimed lands, and we see the races of Azeroth bustling over in Valdracting, forging, putting together the weapons of war. Picture that in your head, and in a way, it kind of draws you in, like, yes, player, you can be a part of this. It's kind of a different vibe, a different energy, right? I'd argue that would have appealed to an audience that yearns to fight along the aspects and feel like a badass, even if the actual launch of the expansion played out the same way as it is now. I guess what I'm trying to say is that Dragonflight's announcements didn't try to bait people in. Dragonflight also introduced the Dracthyr that looks a certain way and is so far limited to this one class, the Evoker, which again is limited to the Dracthyr race. A lot of folks had certain visions of what playable dragons would look and feel like and expected them to be realized in this hulking badass tank that, boom, that like stomps around and crushes enemies. The WoW team clearly lost that part of the audience and likely resulted in more than a few people just writing off Dragonflight altogether, because these aren't dragons, sir. Maybe if the WoW team would have a few more months of dev time, they would have given Dracthyr like a more broad selection of classes to choose from, including tanks. And maybe they made do with what they had, and maybe they're planning for additional class selections to be introduced in the near future. The point is, though, that they didn't, and that hurt players' interest in buying in. And the rest of the reasons are small, but we could also lump all these together into a general sense of wish list not being answered. Like, some folks were hoping for a full-on revolution with this expansion after Shadowlands that would answer every prayer. We hoped for like a world revamp. We hoped for player housing, for account-wide everything, for every race under the sun, and multi-classing, and tinkers, and bards, and you name it. And for some, the announcement came, and what was announced, it popped that balloon of expectations. It's like, oh, so we get flying around and crafting. Whoop-de-doo. So it's like the same old thing for the past 20 or so years. Cool, gotcha. Pass. After Battle for Azeroth, players were lured into the escape of Shadowlands. And then they got Shadowlands. After Shadowlands, though, players were skittish. They weren't going to let themselves be fooled again. Although in hindsight, and to their credit, the WoW team made an arguably honest presentation of what Dragonflight was going to offer. Now, I invite you to share your own reasons why you didn't bother with Dragonflight, and real quick, I want to get back to what else Blizzard said in their report, that post-launch subscriber retention in the West is higher than recent expansions. Now, the recent loss of the entire China region prompted the specific mention of the West, but the statement overall needs a little bit of unpacking. We can read this in a number of ways, and I'll share my viewpoint on them, knowing that we're missing some really crucial information, namely the demographics. According to them, Dragonflight is sustaining subscriber numbers better than in previous expansions. Now, of course, those numbers might be made up of die-hard WoW players who will never ever quit, and, not the fair weather players who wanted to check things out. To be fair though, if retention was like the same or worse than previous expansions that did sell better than Dragonflight, then Okay, then Blizzard would be facing a disaster right now. So it appears that's not the case. Anecdotally, my guild has had almost the same presence and attendance for like its entire lifetime, and we're a 16-year-old guild with pretty much none of its original members. So in my little tiny universe, WoW has been doing just fine. The last thing I'm going to leave here for you folks is this question. What could the WoW team do to reel you back in? I'm asking you, not what you think players want, just you. What would excite you to pick up this or the next WoW expansion? Time heals all wounds, I guess, but player housing would be really cool too. Is there a theme that you're looking for? Or are you waiting for a certain WoW team member person to get replaced or fired? So share your thoughts in a comment below, like and subscribe for more commentary, and that's the video. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.